Till now we have learned a lot, and I think it's time for us to start writing our game. So what I've done in the background, I've created a file by the name of game save Zortan _1. You can see on the tab right over here as well. And I've added a couple of comments. Let us see now what we are supposed to do inside this game. Now, as we remember, Lewis is staying at Zortan, but this time Zortan is under attack. Thanos has arrived and he is going to attack Zortan. Now, fortunately, Lewis can call his Avenger friends from Earth. So he has made a call. Avengers has received his call, and they are going to send 4 of the Avengers to save Zortan. The 4 Avengers who are going to save Zortan are Iron Man, Black Widow, Spider-Man, and Hulk. Each of the Avengers have their own attacking power, and they have to fight with Thanos in order to save Zortan. But we have a couple of conditions. Avengers can only attack in pairs. So that means at each given point of time, a single Avenger cannot attack Thanos because Thanos is much more powerful. So Avengers have to team up in pairs of 2 and they have to attack Thanos. And while doing all of this, Avengers only have 3 chances to kill Thanos. Otherwise, Thanos will kill the Avengers and we will lose the game. Sounds interesting, isn't it? But the first thing that I want you to do is not write the code. Yes, you heard me right. I don't want you to write the code first. First, I want you to understand what we have to do, and then you can start writing code. In order to understand better, I want to introduce to you a very simple concept which is called as VOC DTP. It's a very simple concept that I've come up with, and the entire concept is divided into 2 parts. So as you can see, the first part is VOC, the second part is DTP. So the first part simply means to visualize, outline and code. The next part would be debug, test and polish. For now, we would be concentrating on the first part, visualize, outline and code. So as a programmer, always remember, first you always need to visualize before you can code. You don't have to write code immediately. So let's try to visualize what's going to happen inside our game. Since it's a game, we already have some characters. So let's try to visualize the different characters that we have. We have 2 main categories. One category is for the superheroes and the next category is for the supervillains. We have a specific list for the superheroes, and those are Iron Man, Black Widow, Spider-Man and Hulk. And for the supervillains, right now we have only a single supervillain and his name is Thanos. So this is where we just simply try to visualize how the game would look like. And now we know the characters. In the next step, let's try to outline how these characters would look like and how they would work. So coming to the next point of outline, since we have characters, all of the characters should have some properties. They should also have some constraints, and we should also have some sort of a logic. I have already specified that our Avengers have a fire or an attack power. But if we have an attack power, then we would also require life. And having a property of life would make our job much more simple, and we can implement a very simple logic for the game. Now this game also comes with a couple of constraints that we can't forget. The constraints are, the first one that we saw, Avengers can only attack in pairs. So at a given time, only 2 Avengers can attack. A single Avenger cannot attack, and more than 2 Avengers also cannot attack. And Avengers only have 3 chances of defeating Thanos. So this is where we are just trying to outline how our characters are going to look like. The last and the most important part is, can we come up with some kind of logic where we can simulate the attack? Now let's go back to our code editor and let us see how we can translate all of these things in our step number 3. So as you can see, the step number 3 is to actually code. In step number 3, what we are going to do is, we are just going to translate all of these things to a logic, and that logic would be coded with Python. Now let's start with declaring our variables. If you refer our outline, we have a property and the properties are for your fire or attack power and one for the life. So let's go right over here and let us start creating some of our variables. So we can say the attack power of Iron Man. So I can say Iron Man attack power, and just suppose it to be 250. Now let's start thinking in types. Now since it's a power, I have to do some sort of calculations, so it must be either in integer or in float. For the sake of simplicity, I'm keeping it as integer. The next thing that I want you to remember is, since this is an attack power, we are not going to change the attack power in the future. So no matter even if we are losing or we are winning the game, the attack power of Iron Man is always going to be 250. So just as a stylistic preference, I want to name my variable everything in uppercase. So this would denote that I want to have a constant instead of a variable. Now what do I mean by constant? A constant simply means there is some value which we don't want to change, and that is what we are indicating by writing everything in the uppercase. Now if you just hover over our variable, you can see on the left we have constant. So that means our code editor knows that this is a constant, but we can go further and we can improve our typing. For this, I'm going to import and use something from an additional package. Now what is a package? Package is basically some code that the developers of Python have written and have put all of this code inside a library which is called as the standard library. So what I'm going to do is I want to go to my typing package. So this package lives inside the Python standard library. Please remember that standard library is already built into Python. So from the package of typing, I want to import final, and we can wrap this integer inside final. Now it's very clear that Iron Man attack power, it's not just a variable, it's a constant, and we don't want to change the value of the constant throughout our program. Let us repeat the same thing for Black Widow, Spider-Man and Hulk as well. The next superhero would be our Black Widow, and she has a power of 180. The next one would be Spider-Man. Spider-Man has an attack power of 190. The last superhero would be Hulk, and Hulk, since he is the biggest guy, he has an attack power of 300. Let me put up some comments right over here. So this is where we are declaring our constants, and on the top let me put up one more comment. So this is the stuff that we are importing. Now let's go back to our outline just to figure it out what we are supposed to do next. We have defined the attack power. Now we also need the life. So let me go to the next line, and here I am going to define the life of Thanos, and the life of Thanos is 1500. As you can see, I don't want the life of Thanos to be a constant, I want it to be a variable. That's why I'm declaring everything in small case, and my MyPy is smart enough to infer that Thanos is of the type of integer, or if you want to be explicit, you can always type int right over here. The reason why I don't want it to be constant would get much more clear when we implement the logic for the game. Now let's go back to our outline, and here you can see we have a couple of constraints. The first constraint is Avengers can only attack in pairs. So let us go back to our game, and I want the game users the ability to choose our pairs. In order to give this ability, I am going to create one more variable called as choices, and let me assign it the value of 0. Again, I don't need to annotate as integer because MyPy would be smart enough to infer that my choices variable would always be an integer. After this, let us create a couple of if and else blocks, and let us start creating our pairs for our Avengers. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to create pairs in line. So what I mean, the first pair would be Iron Man and Black Widow. The second pair would be Black Widow and Spider-Man. The third pair would be Spider-Man and Hulk, and the fourth pair would be Iron Man and Hulk. But you're free to make the pairs in whatever choice you want. So here we can say if my choice is 1, in that case I simply want to print out that Iron Man and Black Widow are attacking Thanos. The next choice would be choice number 2, and this time I want to print out Black Widow and Spider-Man are attacking Thanos. Next choice would be 3, and this time Spider-Man and Hulk are attacking Thanos. And the last one, if the choice is number 4, then Hulk and Iron Man are attacking Thanos. While doing all of this, let us not forget that we want to ask the user for the choice of the Avengers. So let us implement that logic, and I want to implement that logic before our if and else blocks. So here I can, since we want to ask the user for the input, we need an input block. And let us display a prompt message saying that enter your pair number. We want to assign the input back to our variable of choice. So choice goes on the left, and let me save my program. But as you can see, we have a small bug. So if we just try to hover, you can see that we have an error saying that incompatible types in assignment, expression has type of string, variable has type of integer. So this was what I was telling you about. Variable has the type of integer. Our variable of choice, as you can see on line number 29, we have declared a variable called as choice, and the type of this variable is an integer. But if you hover on input and if you read the documentation, it is actually giving us a string. So this is where when you start thinking in types, it's going to help you to avoid a lot of bugs. To address this bug, it's a very simple solution. We simply want to convert the string to an integer. And the way to do that is by using a cast. Let me just show you how it is done. So I'm going to wrap all of this inside my brackets, and I want to cast all of this into an integer. So what this means is my input is going to give me a string, and I want to convert that string into an integer right over here. Now our types are going to match. On the left it's also an integer, and on the right it's also an integer. Let me save my program and let me try to run it. Suppose I want my pair number 2. You can see Black Widow and Spider-Man are attacking Thanos. Let me try to run the file one more time. Let me go by pair number 4. Hulk and Iron Man are attacking Thanos. So we have some basic logic in place. This time let us display a nice message to the user informing them of all of the pairs which are there inside the game. So before I ask the input, I want to display a nice message. For this, I'm going to create a new variable called as message, and I'm going to assign some string value to it. So let me create a variable called as message, and I'm going to assign some value to it, and this is the value. So please note that I'm creating a multi-line string by using triple quotes, and just before we can show the choices, I want to print out the message. Let us do that right over here. So we can say print and my message. Let me save the file and let's try to run it. And this time we have a very nice message, and we can see all of the pairs who can attack Thanos. This time let us go with the pair number 3, and we get the output that Spider-Man and Hulk are attacking Thanos. Let me clear up my terminal and let us go back to our code. Now since this message is never going to change, I can actually make it as a constant. So let me change from the lowercase to the uppercase, and here as well. So we have a message in a form of a constant. Let me put up a comment right over here saying that this is going to be one of my helper message, and I can utilize this message multiple times whenever I want throughout my program. Now the next part would be, since we have multiple chances of attacking Thanos, we need some kind of a loop. And inside the loop, we can keep on attacking Thanos for at least 3 times. In order to simulate this loop situation, I'm going to use a while loop. So I can just come down over here, and just before my print message, I can say while true, and let me indent, sorry, it has to be while, not white, and let me indent all of this thing one tab space inside. So all of this belongs to the while loop now. Now let's see, since we have a while loop, we also need some kind of a circuit breaking mechanism in order to exit. Now let's go back to our outline and see how we can do that. One of the constraints is that we only have 3 chances of attacking Thanos. Another constraint is if we have already lost or we have already won, then we can simply break out and we don't have to play again. So we are going to combine this logic together and come up with a very simple circuit breaking mechanism. So let me go back to my code. Now inside my while loop, we need to have some sort of circuit breaking mechanism. So let me put up a comment. Either we can break out whenever we win, or we can break out whenever we lose. So let's write our logic right over here. But before writing the logic, we need to create one more variable, and that variable is going to hold our number of attacks. As you can see the constants, we have 3 chances for an attack. So let's save that data inside one variable. Let me go to the top and declare a variable right over here. So this is called as attack numbers, and I'm going to assign it a value of 0 initially. Let us go back to the while loop and let us write our winning or our losing conditions. First, let us see the winning condition. So we can say if the life of Thanos is less than or equal to 0, that means we have won. But we need to add one more condition right over here, the second constraint, and that constraint would be if my number of attacks is also less than or equal to 3. Only in this case I'm going to win, otherwise I'm going to lose. And I'm going to print some kind of a message over here. So right now let me just put up a comment that this is for the win. For the else block, that means if we have lost, so we can say if my attack numbers are greater than or equal to 3. Oh, this has to be else and if. Now in case my attack numbers are more than or equal to 3, in that case I'm actually going to lose. Now before I forget, we need to add the break statements to actually break out of the while loop. So let me add them right away. The next thing that we need to do is we want to display a nice winning or a nice losing message. So what I have done is I have already written a nice message, which I'm going to paste it right over here just above the message. So the first one would be my winning message, and it's going to be you successfully saved Zortan along with a couple of emojis. And since this is a constant, all of this is capital and this is final str. If you want, you can write this. If you don't want, you can take it out, and MyPy is smart enough to infer that it's a constant of the type of string. The next message would be our losing message. So I'm just saying that Thanos killed Avengers and captured Zortan. The reason why I have all of this separately in a constant or in a variable is because in future, if you don't like these emojis, you can simply take them out, and you don't have to change all of the logic that you write below. You have to just change one constant or one variable, and it's going to reflect throughout your code. It makes our code much more manageable. Let me put back my emojis. I just love them. And go back to our if and else block. Let me remove this, and I can say here I want to print my win message, and here I want to print my lose message. Sorry, it's going to be lost message. Let me save my file. Now let us go back to our outline and let us see what we need to do next. Now we have to do the most important part, that is how to actually simulate the attack. And fortunately for us, this is the most simplest part. Let's see how we can do that. Suppose you are using the first pair right over here. In this case, what's happening is Iron Man and Black Widow, they are going to attack Thanos. And if we just scroll up, Iron Man has a power of 250, Black Widow has a power of 180, and Thanos has a life of 1500. So when Iron Man and Black Widow are attacking Thanos, we simply want to minus the attack power from the life of Thanos. And since we have two Avengers who are attacking Thanos, we have to reduce the value by 250 and 180 from 1500, and that is how we simulate an attack. So let's go down over here and let us implement that logic. So we can say that my new Thanos life would be my current Thanos life minus my Iron Man attack power and also minus the Black Widow attack power, and that's it. And after doing this, we also want to increment the number of attacks since we already have done one attack. So we can say my current attack number would be my attack number plus 1. So initially, if you see, the attack number is 0, and whenever we have an actual attack, we are going to increment it by 1. And remember, we have a constraint right on line number 49 that we cannot have more than 3 attacks. If we have more than 3 attacks, then we are going to lose the game. Let us do the same thing for our choice number 2, 3 and 4 as well. Let me just copy this. Let me paste over here, and before the attack I have to say that my Thanos life would be my Thanos life minus Black Widow attack power minus the Spider-Man attack power. Let me go to the new line right over here. Again the same thing. Let me copy here as well, and then here my Thanos life would be my Thanos life minus Spider-Man attack power minus Hulk attack power. Let us go to the last choice, and here we can say again the same thing. Thanos life would be Thanos life minus Hulk attack power minus Iron Man attack power. Here is my Iron Man. Save it, and that's it. I think we are good to go and we can try out our game. So let's give it a try. Let me take this up a little bit. So the first thing is we have a nice message saying that we have the following pairs. For the first pair, I want to go with the first one, Iron Man and Black Widow. So I just press 1 and enter. So I get the message that Iron Man and Black Widow are attacking Thanos. Now it's asking me for the second pair. Now I can say I want to go with Black Widow and Spider-Man. So I enter my choice number 2. Again we get a message saying that Black Widow and Spider-Man are attacking Thanos, and it is asking me for my third pair. Let me go with Hulk and Iron Man, so I can type 4, and that's it. And unfortunately we have lost the game. Thanos has killed Avengers and he has captured Zortan. Let us play the game one more time. This time I'm going to choose my pair number 4, Hulk and Iron Man, and my pair number 1, and again my pair number 4. And that's amazing. Finally we have been able to save Zortan. You can see the message right over here. And this brings us to the end of section number 3. Just take a break, have some nice snacks or coffee, and I will see you in the next section.